All right, let's get started with another deep dive. Today, we're going to be switching things up a bit.
Oh.
Yeah, instead of our usual pile of books and articles, we're going for something a little more adventurous.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
We're heading to Charles A. Lindbergh State Park in Minnesota.
Ooh, nice.
It's this really cool place where you've got, like, beautiful nature and the story of this American icon all kind of mixed together.
It's interesting how this park isn't just about, celebrating a famous person.
Right.
It's about how the land itself played a big role in shaping who Charles Lindbergh was way before he became, well, the Charles Lindbergh.
Okay, so for anyone who needs a little refresher, what exactly made Charles Lindbergh so famous?
So back in 1927, Lindbergh was only 25 years old.
Wow, 25.
Yeah, and he made this incredible flight across the Atlantic all by himself, nonstop.
Whoa.
He flew his plane, which he called the Spirit of St. Louis, all the way from New York to Paris.
That's a long way.
It was a huge deal. It captivated the world and basically made him a star overnight.
That's some serious aviation history right there.
For sure.
But today we're focusing on a different side of his story, the part that unfolded on the land that would become the park.
Right.
So where exactly are we headed on this deep dive? Paint us a picture.
Okay, so imagine this. We're just outside of Little Falls, Minnesota.
Okay.
It's this charming little town on the banks of the Mississippi River.
I like it already.
And that's where you'll find Charles A. Lindbergh State Park. It's actually a pretty small park, only about 569 acres.
Oh, so it's not like one of those massive state parks with, like, tons of stuff to do?
Exactly, and that size is totally intentional.
Really? Why is that?
Well, the Lindbergh family had a very specific vision in mind when they donated the land.
Makes sense.
They really wanted to preserve the natural beauty and the historical significance of the place. It was very personal to them.
Yeah.
It was originally part of Congressman Charles August Lindbergh's farm.
Wait, so the Charles Lindbergh, we all know, the aviator.
Yeah.
He grew up on this land.
He did.
Wow, I had no idea.
The land was donated in 1931, right after his father passed away.
Okay.
And what's amazing is that the family stayed really involved with the park.
Oh, how so?
Well, they actually went and restored the family home after a fire back in 1905.
Oh, wow.
They even donated some of the original furniture.
That's incredible.
It's a real testament to how strongly they felt connected to this place.
Absolutely. That restored house must be packed with history.
Oh, it is.
I bet.
It's officially a National Historic Landmark run by the Minnesota Historical Society.
Wow.
You can really feel the history when you walk through those rooms.
I can imagine. So what was life like for young Charles on this farm? Can you give us a glimpse into that?
Picture this. Young Charles is out exploring the woods. He's fishing along the Mississippi, which, by the way, was a lot lower back then.
Really?
Oh, yeah. And he's just developing this deep love for nature.
Oh.
There's even this story about him seeing his very first airplane from the roof of his house.
Oh, that's awesome.
Talk about a moment that must have sparked his imagination, right?
Seriously. It makes you wonder how many of those little moments we have in our own lives that, like, shape who we become.
It's true. You never know what's going to have a lasting impact.
And you think about it, this seemingly normal, everyday upbringing is what shaped a man who went on to achieve these incredible things.
It's kind of mind-blowing when you think about it.
It really makes you think about how our environment, those early experiences, they really can set us on a certain path in life.
Yeah, it's powerful stuff.
It's such a contrast to the image most people have of Lindbergh, the daring pilot.
Right.
It seems like this quiet, peaceful place played a huge role in shaping him.
Oh, it definitely seems that way.
And the park's connection to his, whole aviation journey, it doesn't end there either.
No, not at all.
There's actually a spot in the park where he landed his own plane.
Yeah.
What?
It was called Jenny, and he landed it there back in 1923.
So 4 years before his famous transatlantic flight. Hold on, he landed a plane right there in the park. What's it like now?
Well, it's pretty hard to picture a plane landing there today, to be honest.
Yeah, I bet.
The whole area is overgrown with trees now.
Wow.
It's a good reminder of how time keeps moving on, even as history stays with us.
It's pretty amazing how the park blends the personal and the historical together like that.
It is, isn't it?
But I have a feeling there's even more to this place than just the Lindbergh story, right?
Oh, absolutely. While the Lindbergh legacy is definitely at the heart of it, Charles A. Lindbergh State Park has a whole lot more to offer than just a glimpse into the past.
So it's not just like stepping into a museum. What else is there?
Well, if you're looking for a little adventure, there are 7 miles of beautiful hiking trails.
Ooh, nice.
They wind through these amazing forests and along the Mississippi River. Yeah, and if you'd rather explore by water, you can rent canoes and kayaks too.
Oh, that's cool. I can already picture it. Paddling down a peaceful river, surrounded by nature, just soaking it all in.
It does sound pretty relaxing, doesn't it? It's a great way to escape the busyness of everyday life.
Totally. And speaking of escaping, I remember reading that the park has some really cool options for spending the night under the stars.
They do. They have a bunch of different campsites.
What are they like?
Well, some have electrical hookups, for RVs and stuff.
Okay.
Others are more rustic.
Nice.
But the ones that really stand out are the walk-in and canoe-in sites.
Wait, canoe-in campsites. What does that even mean?
It's exactly what it sounds like. You paddle your canoe right up to your campsite on the Mississippi River.
Whoa.
And then you set up camp right there on the riverbank.
Oh, wow. That sounds incredible.
It's a pretty unique experience for sure.
So cool. But you know what really caught my eye when I was looking at pictures of the park?
What's that?
That charming little picnic area.
Oh, yes. It's a popular spot.
It looks so peaceful.
It is. And part of what makes it so special are those WPA-built structures, the picnic shelter and the water tower.
Yeah, those are so cool. What can you tell us about them?
Well, they were built back in the late 1930s by the Works Progress Administration.
Okay.
It was a program that created jobs during the Great Depression.
Oh, right, the New Deal.
Exactly. And what's fascinating is that they were built in this style called rustic-style architecture.
Rustic style? I've never heard of that.
Well, it basically means they used local materials like stone and logs to build the structures.
Oh, cool.
So they really blend into the natural landscape.
That makes sense.
It's actually pretty amazing how forward-thinking they were in terms of sustainable design.
Yeah, for sure.
And those WPA structures aren't just cool to look at,
What do you mean?
They're actually listed on the National Register of Historic Places.
Really? Wow.
So they're officially recognized as these important architectural treasures.
That's so cool. This park just keeps getting more and more interesting.
It does, doesn't it? And it really shows how parks are about so much more than just recreation.
Totally.
They're about preserving our history and heritage, too.
Absolutely. We've talked a lot about the Lindbergh family and the Great Depression, but I'm curious, what about the natural side of things?
Oh, there's plenty of that, too.
What kind of stuff are we talking about?
Well, for starters, the park is home to this really unique plant community called a dry prairie.
A dry prairie? That sounds interesting.
It is. It's basically a prairie that thrives in drier conditions.
Okay.
You'll find all these tough, resilient plants there with deep roots that help them survive the dry spells.
So it's like a little ecosystem of survivors.
Exactly. And in the summer, it's absolutely gorgeous.
What's it like?
Oh, it's just a sea of colorful wildflowers like blazing stars, coneflowers, butterfly weed.
Wow, that sounds beautiful.
It's a sight to behold, for sure.
And I bet it's a great habitat for all sorts of wildlife.
You bet. It's a haven for pollinators, birds, all sorts of creatures.
That's amazing.
There are trails that wind through the dry prairie areas, and the park has signs that explain all about its importance.
Oh, that's cool.
So you can learn as you explore.
So it's amazing how you could always find something new to discover in nature, even in places you think you know.
It's true. There's always something waiting to be uncovered.
And that makes me think about Charles Lindbergh again. We've talked a lot about his childhood, but I'm curious, did he ever come back to the park after it was established?
He did. He actually gave a speech at the dedication of the park's interpretive center back in 1973.
Wow, that must have been something special.
It was. He talked about his childhood memories of the farm, his love of nature, and how important it is to protect wild spaces.
It's like the park became this symbol for him of all the values that shaped him.
That's a really interesting thought.
It makes you wonder about his legacy, How do his actions, both the good and the bad, shape how we see him today?
It's a complicated question.
For sure.
And there might not be any easy answers.
Right.
But this park, this land, it gives us a way to look at his life.
Yeah.
From his humble beginnings to his incredible achievements and the controversies that came later.
It really makes you wonder what he would think about the park today.
It does, doesn't it?
All those people visiting, the stories they share, the way they connect with this land.
It's something to think about.
You know what? I'm curious to hear what people are saying about their experiences at the park.
Oh, yeah.
Have you come across any interesting visitor stories? Yeah, like what kind of things are people saying about their time at the park?
Well, a lot of visitors talk about the sense of peace they find there,
Yeah.
Especially while they're hiking the trails. It's
Oh.
like they can just tune out the noise and listen to the birds and the wind in the trees.
I get that. There's definitely something about being in nature that just melts the stress away.
Totally. And then, of course, there are always those awesome stories about seeing wildlife.
Ooh, like what?
Oh, people spotting deer or maybe getting a glimpse of a playful otter.
Oh, cute.
Or even seeing a bald eagle soaring high above.
Those are the memories you never forget.
Absolutely. And some people discover a real love for paddling down the creek or the river.
Yeah, that makes sense.
They talk about feeling this sense of freedom and adventure, like they're seeing the park in a whole new way.
It really does seem like there's something for everyone at this park.
It does, doesn't it? You've got the quiet contemplation, the thrilling adventures, it's all there.
And the park does such a good job of blending the historical stuff with the recreational stuff.
It's true. You could be hiking along and suddenly you stumble upon the very spot where Lindbergh landed his plane.
Wow.
Or you could be having a picnic in the shade of a shelter built during the Great Depression.
It's like you're surrounded by history everywhere you go.
Exactly. It's a constant reminder that the past is all around us, woven into the present.
You know, speaking of things woven into the park, you mentioned something about geocaching earlier.
Oh, yeah.
What was that all about?
So geocaching is kind of like a high-tech treasure hunt.
Okay, I like where this is going.
People hide these containers, they're called caches, all over the park.
Uh-huh.
And then they post the GPS coordinates online.
Oh, cool.
So other geopatchers can use their phones or GPS devices to try and find them.
So it's like a scavenger hunt that gets you out exploring the park.
Exactly. And it's fun for all ages, honestly.
Yeah, it's awesome.
You could seriously spend a whole day geocaching and discover all these trails and hidden spots you never would have found otherwise.
It sounds like a great way to add a little excitement to a park visit.
Definitely. Especially for kids, it's like a real-life adventure game.
I love it. And it sounds like the park has thought of everything.
They really have.
Families, history buffs, adventure seekers.
It's all there. And they haven't forgotten about those who like to get out in the winter either.
Oh, really? I honestly never thought of this park as a winter destination.
Oh, it's beautiful in the winter. Those same trails we talked about get covered in snow. The trees are all frosty.
Wow.
It's magical.
You're making me want to plan a trip. Are the trails groomed for skiing and stuff?
Some of them are for people who want a more relaxed experience.
Makes sense.
But there are also ungroomed areas if you're looking for more of a challenge.
So there's something for everyone, no matter their skill level.
Exactly. And even if you don't ski or snowshoe, just taking a walk through the park in the winter is amazing.
I bet.
The quiet, the stillness, the snow-covered landscape.
Yeah.
It's like stepping into a whole different world.
I might actually have to add a winter visit to my list.
I think you'd really enjoy it. It's a different side of the park, but just as captivating.
Well, this has been an amazing deep dive. We've covered so much about Charles A. Lindbergh State Park.
We have, haven't we? From Lindbergh's childhood to all the unique things that make the park so special.
Before we wrap things up, do you have any final thoughts for our listeners, something for them to ponder as they imagine visiting the park themselves?
I do. As you explore the park, think about this. Knowing about Charles Lindbergh's life, his childhood dreams that grew out of this land, and the complexities of who he became as an adult, how does all of that affect your experience of the park?
That's a really thought-provoking question.
It is.
It makes you think about how history and nature and the human experience are all connected.
Exactly. And there might not be any simple answers, but the exploration, the curiosity, the reflection, that's where the real discoveries happen.
That's a beautiful way to put it. Well, I want to thank you for taking us on this journey through Charles A. Lindbergh State Park.
It's been my pleasure.
It's a place I definitely want to see for myself now.
I hope you do. And hey, maybe we'll even run into each other there somewhere.
I would love that. To all our listeners, if you're searching for a place to connect with history, with nature, maybe even with yourselves, I highly recommend checking out Charles A. Lindbergh State Park. Until next time, keep exploring.